In day 4 of deliberations, the jury who will decide the fate of the Eaton Centre shooter brought the judge, the defense, the Crown, and the man at the center of this trial back to the university courthouse, not because they had a verdict, but because they had questions around his state of mind on that day back in 2012 and if he should be held criminally responsible. Gunshots sent panicked shoppers running for cover inside the Eaton Centre back in June 2012, and the surveillance cameras inside the lower level of the food court captured why they were running. Christopher Husband's shooting at a group of men. 2 men died, several others were injured, including a 13-year-old boy who survived a bullet to the head. During his second trial for the shooting, the 29-year-old's lawyer told the court Husbands should not be criminally responsible because he was suffering from PTSD and was in a dissociative state brought on by encountering the men who had brutally beaten and stabbed him months earlier. In their 4th day of deliberations, the jurors had some questions today, specifically about the testing for criminal responsibility and whether the physical act of the shooting should be considered along with the outcome, the fact that people were shot.
Particular part of the legal test, whether he appreciated the nature and quality of his actions. The judge's answer was essentially that they cannot consider those outcomes at that time.
It's the last question asking for clarification that took hours to respond, with both the Crown and defense having different interpretations.
The jury's question in a nutshell was, what if we find that some of the shots were fired in an intentional way and some of the shots were fired in a dissociative sense? What does that mean? And to echo the words of the jury, does that mean that the person was NCR, not criminally responsible? And the judge just said that fell down to the question of the onus that the defense has to establish these things. It's not a question. I think it's fair enough to say that that's not a question that found its way very much into the trial process. And it's a question that the jury is asked in this context.
The defense also arguing in court that there is no way of knowing which shots caused the deaths. Husbands has pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder, 5 counts of aggravated assault, 1 count of criminal negligence causing bodily harm, and 1 count of reckless discharge of firearm. His defense lawyers say this is a difficult and complex case for the jury, especially with different experts saying different things about complicated subjects.
It's pretty clear right now that the jury is, at least at the moment, considering the question of criminal responsibility. All of the questions were focused directly or indirectly on the question about whether or not he's NCR, not on the other questions which they could potentially address.
And the judge did give the jurors the option of having dinner at around 6:30 and telling them that they can continue deliberating throughout the night and up until 9 p.m. And as I mentioned, Christopher Husbands was also in the courtroom throughout the day. He was brought in handcuffs, wearing a gray blazer and black pants. The handcuffs were removed, and he was able to take notes throughout the discussions today. At some points, he was also turning around, sharing smiles with a woman who later identified herself as his fiancée.